in maybe the best year for video games ever. Might be debatable, but it's definitely up there. Swings in Marvel's Spider-Man 2. A literal marvel of superhero storytelling in video games. I made a video recently on the things I wanted to see in the game before release, and while not perfect to that, it's so very close. So here's my review of Marvel's Spider-Man 2 on the PS5. Just like the Cyberpunk review that I did before, there may be some spoilers here and there. I'll try not to spoil like endings and stuff, but I'll mention characters that you may or may not know are in the game and stuff like that, so just be warned. Before I venture into specific sections that I need to talk about, I want to go over some of the things I wanted to see in the game from our last Spider-Man 2 video. One of the first things I discussed was that I wanted to see fewer collectibles and less repetitive side content in favour of more fleshed out additions and side storylines. Well, for the most part, we got that. All of the side content was much more manageable in this game, less of those optional objectives that just took so much time in the first game. And at times, those pieces of side content were really fun and entertaining. The base style side activities that plagued the first game are mostly gone, and what is there is a lot more engaging and a lot more stealth orientated. I heard a lot of things about stealth not being that great in this game, but Miles' stealth powers with his camo and just I really enjoyed the stealth in this game. It could be better, it's not the Arkham games in terms of stealth, but it wasn't that bad at all. The Mysterio side story was really intriguing, and most of the Mysterium activities across New York were pretty good, other than one that was rather frustrating, and I know I wasn't the only one that struggled on it. But overall, it was a great time, and the final mission in that was excellent. Side story focusing on the Flame was a really nice distraction that potentially sets up something special down the line, and had a really great reveal at the end. The pacing of the side content was also fantastic and acted as a good palate cleanser between missions. The crimes across the city were less repetitive, and they felt like less of a chore this time around. Just everything there felt like an improvement over the original game. Of course, there are still a few collectibles, but they weren't that bad, and there was a nice little tease at the end of one of the collectibles, which I really enjoyed. Moving on, I also talked about my need for a bigger and more detailed open world, and I can say we got half of that. The new areas of New York are great, Brooklyn and Queens, awesome, and the game does have a few story events that do change the open world a slight bit, though the lack of a true day-night cycle was really disappointing, especially considering you could switch between the two in the original game, I believe, and even Miles Morales. So those wanting to play during a nighttime setting may want to make a save point at a certain point in the story where it's appropriate to do so. There have been rumours of an update to add this into the game, but as of my playthrough, I've heard nothing, and it's a little disappointing also that there weren't that many weather options in the game. You know, I would have liked to have seen maybe some snow, maybe some rain, but that's a lot more understandable since it's, you know, the time frame of the story. I can understand that one. The last thing I'm going to discuss in relation to the previous video was a combination of 2 points I made. I wanted to see more villains within the game, but I also wanted a more balanced take on all of them. I wanted them all to have either an equal part or just to have reason to be there. I guess you could say I wanted less of a focus on quantity and instead a focus on quality, and I feel like the game perfected that. While there are a few boss fights in the game with villains that weren't exactly central to the plot itself, what we got was excellent and miles above anything regarding the Sinister Six in the first game. I felt like the boss fights in that game were just really disappointing, but I can't say the same here. The opening boss fight with Sandman, the chase and subsequent fight with Lizard, and the Mysterio sequence were all great uses of Spider-Man villains. There's also a lot more later on in terms of bosses, but I won't really discuss or go into those. My main issue with the villains, like I said in the first game, was that they were kind of just there to make up the numbers. The Sinister Six weren't important at all. It was Doc Ock that was the main villain, and while of course this game has main villains, everything here just feels like it belongs here. It feels like it has a purpose. It just all feels natural and woven into the story in the right way. The final boss fight was an awesome experience and an excellent way to end on a high. Again, I won't spoil that experience for anyone yet to play, but you're definitely in for a treat. Now, let's dive right into the story while we're on the topic. It is far above any Spider-Man video game story we've ever seen before. Both Miles and Peter were fun to play as at different parts of the game, while Peter's story definitely took the spotlight during key moments, for obvious reasons if you have played the game. It was still a treat to experience it all. Miles' desperation to track down Martin Lee and the events that follow were a joy to experience, and the connectivity of that storyline to Peter's was almost seamless. Kraven was an incredible choice for a villain and is one of the best in superhero games as a whole. I really enjoyed learning his backstory and motivations, as well as experiencing the fights that came with it. Now, away from Kraven, I do have to delve into some more spoilery stuff. It's not really a spoiler, I guess, but I want to talk about Venom. Tony Todd's voice is perfect in the role, and everything that was presented here was fantastic. There's a lot of late game moments regarding Venom and Spider-Man in the black suit, and all of that was amazing and really satisfying. My only issue with the character is the lack of a post-game free roam, I guess, with Venom, or just, I would have loved to have played with him in an open world setting. I understand why, I just wish they could have thrown all of that aside and just let us swing around and cause some havoc wherever possible. Now, continuing on with some gameplay aspects, the world traversal is by far the best in a superhero game. It tops the first game by a huge margin, and even for me edges out the likes of Batman Arkham Knight, even with the Batmobile. Just the addition of web wings and wind tunnels and all these traversal abilities have made New York a delight to travel across. It turned a New York that we've played on many times before into a whole new experience, at least for me. Now, in terms of mission structure, the variety far exceeded the past game and was a major improvement. The MJ missions were fun this time. I know, a shock, but yeah, this time around they were really fun, didn't feel like a chore. The combat in the game did get a little repetitive by the end, but nowhere near the level of the first game, though the loss of some gadgets between games was a bit disappointing. I also want to quickly mention here the soundtrack for the game, which was great as usual. There's not much to say on that other than if you love the previous two game soundtracks, you'll love this one. It's very Spider-Man. Visually as well, the game looks fantastic, though there are a few issues I had with some facial models at times that looked rough during certain moments but were fine in others. It was really weird, but mostly the game looks great. So it's time to give the game a score. I'll be completely honest with everyone, my hype before the game came out was really low compared to a lot of the other games releasing currently. I feel like that was the reason. It was the other games, you know, I was putting off Spider-Man until last, and I was sure that experiencing the likes of Baldur's Gate 3 and the new Cyberpunk 2077 expansion and update, I just couldn't see Spider-Man 2 reaching those heights, despite being a different genre of video game entirely. If I were to review the original game, the very first game on PS5, if I was reviewing that today, it would be around an 8. But with everything I've just said, Marvel's Spider-Man 2 is a 10 out of 10. It's a spectacular masterpiece of superhero storytelling. Is it the greatest superhero game of all time? It very well could be, but at the very least it's one of the best games in a year full of amazing games. It was so much fun to play, and I really didn't think I would enjoy it as much as I did. I feel like the new additions, especially Traversal, were really what did it for me. The story was great, the villains were awesome, just a lot of fun, and I was never really bored throughout. So yeah, thanks guys for watching, and I know I've been slowly making my way through some of these games, so the reviews are quite late. We don't get review copies, I'm afraid, but I'm doing reviews where I can. We've released a Forza Motorsport review, Sean dealt with that, and I did the Cyberpunk 2077 plus Phantom Liberty review, so please go check those out if you haven't already. We really do appreciate all the love we're getting on these videos, and I've hopefully got another one coming your way soon after this. I have another game that I want to talk about, and yeah, so let us know what you thought of Spider-Man 2 in the comments down below, and we'll see you next time.